Hi, I'm Lindsay,
And I'm Connor.
and this is a Hidden Rabbits chat.
Another little fireside chat.
Yes, welcome to the fire. I'm Lindsay, and this is my boyfriend, Connor.
Yeah, so today's topic is comparison
Yes.
and how much of a thief comparison can feel like or can be functionally.
Yes, and there are a few different directions that we could approach this because you and I are both filmmakers. So, of course, surrounded by people who also work in the film industry.
Yeah.
I'm a writer. I do screen and television writing, but I also do prose. So I'm surrounded by creative people in that field. And you didn't go to, this sounds so passive aggressive. I swear to God, it's not. You didn't go to college, but you are part of a generation who almost exclusively went to college and pursued like white collar jobs and did the very good, wholesome American thing, which was graduate from high school and then go to college and then get a job in finance and then die very young of heart disease. Right. And you didn't do that. So there's a lot of comparison going on.
There is. And I think especially, at least in the film world, I'm sure in other art fields as well, it's really easy to draw a comparison between your career and the person you're looking at who just won an award on a stage.
Yes.
And I know I've been guilty of that for a lot of points in my career.
Well, we touched on this in our nepotism episode, but the film industry and any creative industry, really, it is all who you know. Yeah. And the wealthier you are and the more famous you are, of course, the more people you know. So it's not, we don't exist in a meritocracy. It's not as if we're all just competing to see who can work the hardest.
Right.
It's just who knows the right guy right now. I think it's very difficult when you're working so hard and you're pushing so hard for something that you love and that you care about. And you look over and you see somebody who didn't have to do any of that and they're getting all the flowers.
Exactly. And I think something that ends up happening is, you and I, it's funny, we'll pick a topic and talk about it on the podcast, but then we'll continue to talk about it for days or weeks afterwards.
Yes.
Our conversation on nepotism is one that we circle back to pretty regularly throughout the week. And something that you and I talked about recently is that not all nepotism is actually that bad, right? There are forms of nepotism that are just very natural, right? I think we mentioned on the podcast of like, my dad was a hockey player professionally. He played professional hockey. If I had decided to be a hockey player too, that would have been great for me. I'm kind of set up for a little bit of success in terms of I've got a built-in coach who's going to take care of me, And that in a way is a form of nepotism, or at least an unfair advantage, I should say. But the thing that we ultimately talked about was like the idea that the problem with nepotism is that if you let in even a little bit into the system, that means the system is no longer entirely merit-based, because now there are people who function in the system that got through not because of merit.
And not to get too heady or about this, but I don't think you can get rid of nepotism entirely.
No.
I mean, if you really want to chase the rabbit down the rabbit hole, it's like, why am I a writer? And it's like, because of my parents.
Right.
Neither one of my parents are writers. They both worked in construction. My mom works in IT now. Nobody in my family works in a creative field, I don't think. But the family that I grew up in was very supportive of me in all of my creative pursuits. Yeah. They are very particular and funny and dysfunctional. I love you, but we're crazy.
Yeah.
So if I hadn't been born into that family, I probably wouldn't have pursued writing. I would have gone into dentistry, or I would be selling houses right now. I'd be doing something else. But because of the family I was born into and the circumstances that I was born into, writing found me. I found my way to writing. And so there's really no way to separate like where you come from and what you end up doing as your career.
Exactly.
I think.
Exactly. And I think that's true. And that's, now that we're not going to talk about nepotism again for another episode, but I do think that's worth saying.
It's a sinkhole of a conversation.
It is a sinkhole of a conversation. And I think it feeds into comparison and comparing yourself as an artist to others.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of comparing that happens in careers because you kind of have to. I can't speak for other artistic fields, but I know for film, if you're not comparing yourself, if you're not looking at others and going, where are they, where am I? You kind of get lost and you kind of lose track of like progress. Because progress is measured against your peers, right? There's a kind of the concept of like having a class, like your class at USC, right? You have a graduating class that you graduated with, and you're all kind of working not together, but alongside each other in the industry. And I think the thing is, what I noticed once I started going to a lot of film festivals, independent film festivals, as a filmmaker, I started looking around, and the more festivals you go to, the more you start to see the same people over and over again.
Yes.
The more filmmakers you see over and over again. And you start to realize, oh, this is the class that I'm with. These are my classmates. And we're all working together at the same time.
Yeah.
You know?
Actors talk about that all the time where they're like, if you go on enough auditions, soon enough, you start seeing the same 5 guys who look like you in the room.
Right.
Because you're all going after the same roles. Like Jennifer Lawrence, oddly enough, talked about this. She was like, early in my career, Emma Stone and I were going out for the same roles.
Is that right?
And she's like, that seems really goofy now, which it does. Like, I don't think they're the same type at all. What they're funny women. Like, is that a type?
Right.
They're both funny women with nice voices. I guess that's a type that we're going for.
Yeah.
But they kept going out for the same roles, and sometimes Emma would get it, and sometimes Jennifer would get it, and sometimes neither one of them would get it. But it's really hard in that situation not to be comparative.
Right.
Because you're literally looking at the person constantly, like just kind of running alongside each other like you're thoroughbreds in a race, and they get the job and a couple $1,000s and a nice little notch on their resume.
Exactly. And that's the other thing, is the money and the prestige that comes with earning a job, right?
How can it not? Everything goes back to class. I keep saying it on the podcast. At some point, everybody will believe me. Everything goes back to Reagan or class.
Or
usually both of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, but that's so true, especially for actors, because there's such a direct thing. And I think actors, I mean, everybody in the arts, but actors we can stick with for a second, because you and I have talked about it. Acting and actors who get chosen, there's almost no rhyme or reason to it. Like, to who gets cast into a project. It's not always the best actor. It's not always the best looking actor. It's not always the best connected actor. It's just kind of random almost, you know?
You think so?
Just because of the rooms I've been in, and maybe it's different for different places, you know, because I was on a couple of shows that I was in the office for. And part of being in the office was that our casting director was also in the office with us. And we were casting for episodes every week. And I got to overhear some of the conversations between the casting directors and the directors that we had coming in for the show. And some of the conversations were the director coming in and being simply like, who do you think was Jennifer. Cool. All right. Sounds good. Right. And they cast that person just because the casting director says, this person, I think. And the director goes, great, let's do it. Other times, the director, I heard, make casting decisions based on social media following, that actor's previous work, and how it might relate to the work that they're currently casting for, and how it might look as a big overall picture.
Yes.
Right? I've heard them talk about things like them being in the news right now. They just released the news about them being on this Marvel movie. It would be great for us if we had them in this now.
That's what I've experienced. I don't think that's random. That's political.
That is political.
I think most casting, I was naive and 18. I thought, well, if you're the best actor in the room, you'll get cast. And that's not necessarily true. There are very political decisions that get made.
Yeah.
And especially in the time of like Hollywood trying to prove that it's not racist, those calculations just got even more convoluted and ridiculous.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you're right, though. That's a better way to put it. It's not random, it's political.
Yeah.
And I think politics has a tendency to be random on the outside.
It would seem random. If I'm Jennifer Lawrence and I nail my audition and I'm like, I'm perfect for this role, the director loves me, and I have a friend on the crew.
Yes.
I'm in.
Right.
And then I don't get it. It's like, what the fuck? Why did they cast Emma Watson? Why did she get it?
Right.
So to me, it would seem random, but behind the scenes, nothing is ever random in Hollywood. Everything is done for a reason, except for the plots. Apparently, I think producers are just throwing darts at boards, being like, "Oh, I know, it's about a cloud who becomes a meatball, and then there's a woman.
Yeah,
let's make that movie. They put that into Chat GPT and get we'll put Dwayne the Rock Johnson in there, so he'll be the cloud."
Right.
God, I can't wait to do more Coke. And that's
the end of the conversation.
Yeah. And that's the movie that we get over the summer.
Well, let me ask you this. As a writer, because I feel like with writing, there is such a high potential for output, right? Because there's no like barrier in terms of having a studio approve or disapprove certain types of writing. Because you engage in screenwriting, you do prose, you do articles people pay for. So between all those things, you could just publish pieces on your own, no matter what. If everything collapsed, you could, in theory, publish on your own, no matter what. How have you experienced in your writing career comparison?
The first year that I applied to residencies, I got waitlisted for several, and then I didn't get in to those ones that I was waitlisted for. And of course, they post like their alumni, like who actually got in that year. And I ended up going because I wanted to see like what kind of work are they doing? Where are they getting published? Where do they go to school? I want to see like, how can I up my chances next time? And I couldn't find the reason.
Right.
It's not that I thought their writing is, clearly much better. For some people, that was definitely the case. I was like, yeah, like, you are going to win an award like tomorrow. Of course, you got into this residency. Some of the writing I read was absolutely gorgeous and blew my boots off. But some of it I thought was comparative to mine. And maybe that's egotistical of me. But I was looking at their writing and where they went to school and at the residencies that they have participated in, and all of their experience. And I couldn't figure out why they got into the residency and I didn't.
Really?
And it led me to believe that like there's just something in the application that made them seem like a better fit for that place than I am. But because I got multiple rejections kind of at the same time, it led me to think like, well, maybe I'm not the kind of writer who goes to residencies. Like,
really,
I might not be well suited for that. Like they might not be looking for me. And I felt that before when I was an actress in New York, because you've seen me act a little bit before. My style is not like abstract. I'm certainly not a Nicolas Cage type, you could say. I'm not making the most artsy decisions. It's very like, I belong like best friend, next door neighbor girl who gives you sage advice. And then at the end, you finally listen to me and you're like, oh, she knew all along. And I'm like, yes, that's my character.
You don't play Juno, you play Juno's best friend. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So I played that role for like 5 years and I wasn't getting cast in anything all of a sudden. It's because that kind of faded out. That style wasn't in anymore.
Right.
When I was in New York, the style was like abstract, like big, very evocative, very sexual, primitive stuff. And I wasn't that kind of actor. So I wasn't getting cast in anything. And it was very disheartening because I was like, I've dedicated pretty much my whole life up to this point to this thing that no longer wants me. So I'm just going to have to pivot and figure out another way to fit into this industry because I don't fit in here.
Yeah.
And then that led me to writing, which turned out to be a great pivot. I'm much better at writing than I am at acting. But it's the same thing with residencies and with prose, where there is part of it that makes me feel very downtrodden and makes me feel like, man, I'm just not the type to write poetry in the woods, I guess. I thought I kind of was, but maybe not. And then there's another part of me that feels very motivated and very much like Seabiscuit. Like I am going to get to the finish line,
right,
in spite of you, just to prove to you that I can do it,
right,
that I am good,
that I deserve to be here.
I am going to work harder than any of you, and I'm going to get so good, that I'm going to blow your boots off, kind of thing. I'm very competitive.
You are very competitive, which I think lends itself to your like not giving up attitude about things. Because I think it's worth saying for people who are not familiar with the process of applying to a residency, it's a very laborious process. And I mean, you treat it like a full-time job. Like I see you constantly looking for residencies, constantly adding them to your calendar, constantly creating application packets, going over the things you've written, making sure they're tightened, thinking about the order that you present things in. Maybe
getting letters of recommendation. Yeah. It is a full, and it's like expensive. It's like $75 sometimes for an application. Expensive. So it can be expensive too. Yeah. And for all of that work to kind of go nowhere is definitely, that's also part of like an artistic career though, is getting rejected 100 times and getting told yes one time. So you have to chop your way through the bamboo of all those rejections to get to the one panda bear of yes.
Yeah. But that does bring a good point, which is rejection is a part of being an artist.
Yes.
That's always been a part of being an artist.
Yes. All of your favorites died penniless, which is not me saying that you should die penniless and be happy about dying penniless. I'm saying they were the best and they died with nothing.
Yeah.
And
I think there's something to be said for the fact that recognition doesn't always come because like what you just said about being an actress in New York in the kind of late 2010s, right? That wasn't the time to be that.
No.
But if you had stuck with it, who knows? If you had done that for 40 years.
Yeah, I'm not in New York theater scene anymore. So maybe it is that. Maybe it's very like mumblecore, realistic thing. But at the time, that wasn't what the style was.
Right.
But yes, as much as I detest a lot of forms of social media because I think a lot of it is very unnatural to see where everybody you've ever met is and what they are doing and how well they are doing it.
Yeah.
As much as I kind of detest that, I also kind of require it. I'll sell myself out here. I need a little bit of competition to keep going.
You do. Yeah.
If I were queen of the world and every word I wrote got published and won a Pulitzer and people were kissing my hands when I went places, I don't think I would write very much.
No, you don't think so?
I think I would write some, but I would lose steam very quickly and just be like, who cares about that? I don't care about I'm very prone to lying on a fainting couch, just being like, what does it all mean? You know? And I think I would just probably indulge in that. But because I feel right now that I'm constantly in this place where I need to prove myself and I need to feel legitimate. And I also need to beat that guy because that guy didn't work very hard in college and that girl is rich. I like that punching energy really gets me to sit down and work on my screenplay for 5 hours because all the writers in the comments know I see these comments all the time where they're like, yeah, I have this manuscript. I've been putting off looking at that.
Right.
Like we all do that. We all procrastinate our own projects. And what consistently gets me out of that slump is seeing somebody that I think doesn't deserve something. Get something.
I think 2 points there is one, it's, I know this as an artist as well. You know this too. I think every artist can relate to the idea that like having a good motivator to get you to do the thing, priceless.
Whatever it is.
Priceless.
Oh.
You know, so if like visualizing drowning your enemies is the way to get you to write pages, as long as you're not drowning your enemies in real life, don't do that.
Drown them in the literary sense.
Yes, do that. Then it's like worth it. Fuck it, you know?
Whatever gets you there.
Whatever gets you there.
I recognize this is like a largely unhealthy characteristic that I have where I'm just like, I'm like a pit bull all revved up on steroids.
We've had conversations about this.
I lose my mind. I start pacing. I get sweaty. I'm serious. I have a problem.
No, you're like an owl in a bird cage, just like doing push-ups, waiting until you're like testing the bars like a raptor.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm Pierce Brosnan at the beginning of Dante's Peak. Yeah. The love of my life is dead. I have to do 150 push-ups. Yeah. That's me. And then I will sit down at my laptop and I will get 12 pages written by the end of the night.
Which that's the thing that's crazy to me about you and your habits is you'll tell me in the morning, because you stay up pretty late.
Yes.
You'll tell me in the morning, oh yeah, I got like 12 pages done yesterday.
Yes.
I kind of wanted to get more. It's like, I don't even know how you get that many done. That's an insane amount. For screenplays, I think the typical amount is like between 2 and 5 pages.
That's my average is like I'll sit down 2 pages and that's pretty good. That's on a day where like I'm really in the zone. I'm getting stuff done.
Yeah.
But recently I'm working through some fury.
You are.
So I'm getting 12 pages done a night.
You know, there's a good quote by Anthony Bourdain, rest in peace, where he said, my life is just a series of stratagems to avoid laying in bed and smoking weed all day. You know, and that's kind of, because otherwise I'm going to do that if I don't set up kind of a routine or a strategy to prevent my lazy self from doing that.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
This is like not related.
Yeah.
What is it with straight men and Anthony Bourdain?
This is going to get me into trouble probably. Anthony Bourdain, I think, is grossly both misunderstood and misinterpreted. People look at him and assume a lot of falsities about the way that he is, and they ascribe a lot of negative things to the way that he has affected young men, specifically about food. And I think young men have taken the Anthony Bourdain thing a little too far.
This is like very hidden to me. I don't understand it. Because, okay, I never watched Anthony Bourdain's show.
Sure.
And I never read his book. I'm not a foodie.
No, you're
in particular.
not.
I'm also a type 1 diabetic. So the foods that I can eat are pretty depressing.
It's tough.
To be fair. But even when I could eat whatever, I was just like, whatever. I just want gas in the tank. Like I'll eat frozen peas for dinner if, you know.
And I am a foodie.
And you're a foodie.
Yeah.
So, but there's this whole like mythos surrounding Anthony Bourdain, especially in like young men, like men between like 21 and 30 love Anthony Bourdain.
They do.
And we watched that documentary together and I loved the documentary, but I'm not seeing the thing totally. Like, you know, the magnetization.
And this is something we could probably ask my dad.
Because he likes Anthony Bourdain too, right?
He rewatches No Reservations probably once a year.
So interesting.
He loves that show so much. And I think part of it is that he ultimately ended up living the dream out loud that so many people carry quietly.
Pretty much.
Which is traveling the world, seeing beautiful places, eating food that is like going to a hole-in-the-wall restaurant in the middle of Mongolia on the border of the steppe and Russia, and having a bowl of meat handed to you after biking there for 8 hours on a motorcycle and you don't understand the language, you're at the total mercy of the world around you, right? There is a magic there that happens that he understood. And I think it's kind of like how people take the Joker too far, where it's like, you're misunderstanding the Joker, right? And it's like, people think that he was pretentious about food, when in reality, he wasn't. He would go to Waffle House and tell you that it was the most delicious meal he's had in the last month. But when it comes to food, people get very pretentious for some reason. And we talked about pretension and being pretentious earlier today, right? About having taste.
Yeah, that's another episode I'd like to do, is talking about pretentiousness and how I have no idea how to feel about it. But
I think Anthony Bourdain is actually a really good topic, a kind of a side topic for our conversation about comparison here. Because I think the reason people like young men felt so enamored with him is because they compared their lives to what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately they thought they wanted what he had, which was the ability to travel anywhere in the world, go to any country, any nation, find a hole-in-the-wall restaurant and eat there.
Well, and also be famous.
And be famous. And that's the thing that people don't understand is like, yes, he's doing that, but he also has a camera crew. He also has a budget. Like
a plan.
He's got investors, it wasn't just fly by the seat of his pants, like a food vlogger might be, right? But I totally get it.
I think it seems to me like just what people naturally do.
Mm-hmm.
If we hadn't invented this whole structure of credit unions and bureaucracy, we
right.
would just be walking around the world being like, what's this? And eating it.
Yeah.
And like wearing leather jackets and being like, oh, this is my friend Pam and she owns a motorcycle shop and she makes homemade buns.
Right.
And we would just hang out in the rain and eat Pam's buns.
Exactly. And I think what it is like Anthony Bourdain had a very similar life to what we view Werner Herzog now with his new social media. Werner Herzog,
one of my favorite people in the entire world,
has one of the best social media presences of all time.
I am obsessed with how he cannot even help himself. He literally uploaded a video the other day where he was like, this is an arrow that I pulled out of my friend Hans. He was hit by a hunter. You can see the viscera still on the tip of the pointed arrow.
Because they were an uncontacted tribe that threw an arrow at us while we were filming. Like,
talk about a life.
Right.
That's the life. See, when people are like, I want to be like Werner Herzog, I'm like, I get it. Fascinating lifetime.
When Anthony Bourdain had a similar thing where it's like you see Anthony Bourdain travel, you see the people that he's talking to, and you're like, I think Anthony Bourdain might be the least interesting person in his friend group. That's incredible because of the way that he is presented, right? But the thing is, Anthony Bourdain was also familiar with the veneer that he had put up around himself, the kind of corporate veneer that he had because of the show, because of the television, because of the Emmy, like all that stuff, right? So I think Werner Herzog probably had a bit more of a storied life than Anthony Bourdain did. But at the same time, that documentary did a good job of like showing who his friends were and what a wide array of people Anthony Bourdain was friends with, right? Artists, chefs, random people who just happened to be in like Europe, Uruguay, Mongolia.
And again, you think this is like the life that a lot of people aspire to have.
I think so. There's kind of a meme concept of like dad lore of like,
yes,
I'm young in my mid-20s now. I'm doing crazy stuff for the sake of building my dad lore.
Yeah.
So that when I'm in my 40s and I have children, they'll go, Dad, why do you have this picture of you on the back of a motorcycle in Vietnam? And it's like, well, let me tell you a story.
I lost my mind.
Right, exactly.
Found it in Vietnam. Yeah.
That's the thing. That's
okay.
I think that's what Anthony Bourdain was living.
On a similar note, and going back to comparison a little bit,
please.
I've told this story on this pod before, but I got very sick when I was in grad school with onset of type 1 diabetes, went into a coma, lost all my hair, gained a bunch of weight because I was on insulin, and I came back to school feeling so sick. I mean, humiliating. And I had this professor at the time who went to USC himself. And while he was in his last year at USC, he developed cancer.
Oh my God.
And he started going through chemotherapy and surgery and radiation. And it was I think it was a later stage of cancer too. So he was very, very sick and it was very, very scary. And he beat it, of course.
Wow.
He beat it.
Okay.
But then he graduated and he was like, yeah, I grew my hair out. I grew my mustache out. I broke up with my girlfriend, bought a leather jacket, got on a motorcycle and just drove across the continental US. And for years could not be pinned down. Was just here. He'd call by a payphone, just be like, hey mom, I'm alive, love you. And would keep driving. Because he was like, I was 21 and I realized it could all be over, and I don't want to sit in an office and just like work my whole life. So I need to go and just be in the wild for a while.
Kind of on the road style.
Yeah. And he told me that when I got back, and he's like, so just do whatever you need to do, get by, graduate, and then do what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did graduate, and I wasn't in any station or ability to do something like get a motorcycle and just drive around the country.
No.
And I remember thinking about that story every morning when I woke up, being like, I'm not living my new chapter of life. Like,
right.
It felt for a long time after I woke up from the coma, like, oh, I got a second chance. And my second chance is so boring. It's just like counting pebbles and like looking for work and trying to call friends and see what people are up to, and living in Los Angeles and hiding from the sun and then getting a mole removed. It's just like the most like banal thing in the world. And that was something that kept like plaguing me. I was on this carousel of like, he bought a motorcycle and just went out. He bought a motorcycle and just went out. You're not doing that. You're just sitting here looking at LinkedIn. This is humiliating. You're not living your life. And I just could not get out of that loop for the longest time.
That's a tough loop to break out of.
And it's even tough now. I think about it and I'm like, God, that wasn't my journey. That wasn't my life. That wasn't something that I could do or even would want to do, really. It was just the idea of doing something big and spontaneous and goofy.
And free.
Yeah. Just being a childless woman in my 20s with nothing holding me anywhere.
Yeah.
But I did have something holding me somewhere, and it was type 1 diabetes.
Exactly. Well, I think that's the thing. I think a lot of young men romanticize the idea of getting on a motorcycle and driving across the country, and
that I understand.
Yeah,
that's very sexy.
I totally get that too.
Yeah.
I've thought about that as well.
Yeah.
I get it. I think it also, to your point, not everybody can do that.
No.
If it's money, if it's health, if it's family, if it's responsibility, I think that's part of why parents ultimately tell their children, like, do stuff now while you're young and you don't have anything holding you back, tying you down, responsibilities. Because we don't have a child, we don't have a dog, we don't have a mortgage.
We don't have metal knees. I mean, we've got a lot going for us right now.
But at the same time, you have diabetes, right?
Yeah.
Right? I have a family that I care about, and I want to see my nephew grow up. So I want to be present for that.
We're not wealthy.
So
that's another like lack of freedom.
And you don't need to be wealthy to travel around the country on a motorcycle. You can save up and you can work and whatever. But there is a certain station of privilege that I think that kind of thought process comes from, because it doesn't take everyone's thing into account. You can only take your own life into account.
Mm-hmm.
You can't take everybody else's life into account when it comes to making those kinds of decisions. But I understand why, when you see somebody living that way, it's very easy to look at them and go, it's like being in a cage as a bird and looking at a bird outside and going, what does that freedom look like? Right. But ultimately, I think what you pinned on at the end of that is like your explanation was, I think as we get older, there's a certain grace that you develop as a person where you go, that's not my story. That's not my thing. I wouldn't have wanted that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
We have an episode on our YouTube channel back then about the Age of Scorpius fiasco.
Yeah.
And we said at the start of that episode, it's like, we're going to be talking about an author who has found some success. And the problem with doing that, with the drama surrounding them, is that it sounds like jealousy coming from us.
Right.
And I think we openly said, and you even mentioned this in your Hosiermance episode, where you said, it's not that these people bother me because they're taking up a space, because it's not a space that I would have filled anyway.
I never would have gotten there. Ever. I would have never written a series of fantasy romance novels that went famous on TikTok. I never would have. That will never be my journey.
No.
So
exactly.
There's no jealousy there. I don't feel like I'm looking at her and I'm like, oh, I should be a USA Today bestseller list. I was going to write a sexy Hosier book. Like
exactly.
I wasn't.
Exactly.
I was never going to.
And that's like a level of grace that I think every artist needs to eventually learn if they're going to survive and not go crazy. There's a certain amount of grace that I think comes with being an artist.
So switching that scary lack to, oh my goodness, thank God somebody is showing me that I can do that too. Thank goodness that exists, because that's a guideline for me. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting that is happening for that person, because I know that I can be excited for them and happy for them, and I can create that for myself in a version that suits me even better because it's my own and it's authentic to me.
And beyond just being an artist, I think being a person.
Yeah.
All the people that you come into contact with, there are plenty of people who are leading really amazing lives. There's this one woman that I connected with out here. She's a writer. She lives in Minnesota. I kind of have a crush on her. Like
Really?
I have a crush on her and her life. She hangs out with horses all day.
Oh.
She's always somewhere cool that I want to go. The Arctic Circle. And then she was in Greenland and she was like shaking somebody's hand. Like I think the Prime Minister of Greenland. She was like, I met him and I'm writing a screenplay with him. And I'm like, what? And then she's in an igloo. And then she's hanging out with a penguin. And then suddenly, she's in Norway looking at the Aurora Borealis for National Geographic. And I'm like, what? I'm foaming at the mouth over that. I am jealous of that. Envious. Green with envy over that. But I also look at her life and I read every piece of writing she publishes. And as beautiful as it is not my style of writing. And it never will be my style of writing. This is another thing I struggled with when I was in college is I had a very thick Texas accent when I was a kid. We lived in Texas. How long was I there? 11 years.
Okay.
And we lived like out in Texas. And then I went to high school in Dallas. So the accent is very much still alive and well down there. And I moved to New York to go to college, and I tried so hard to get rid of the accent that by the time I moved to New York, I thought it was gone. But it was not gone.
It wasn't gone.
Everybody knew instantly, oh, you're from Texas, blah, blah, blah. And that carried really negative stigma at the time. I think people assumed I was rude. They would assume that I didn't align with them politically. They assumed that I was going to be racist or whatever, or a hillbilly or whatever else they thought. So I worked for years trying to get rid of that accent. And I hated how American my writing sounded. I hated it. I was like, I wish I was an Irish writer because it has this beautiful rhythm, or I wish I was an English writer because it's so earthy and rainy and it feels like fog. And I just think that feels so much better. And so much American writing feels like you're standing on the plains in Oklahoma, just like, well, look at this big fat lot of nothing, you know? And I was like, I don't want my writing to sound like that. So I tried very hard for a very long time to sound like I wasn't from the United States.
Yeah.
And it didn't work.
Because that's not you.
Because I am.
Yeah.
I'm a very American writer. I have a Texas accent. You read my writing. I don't think there's any question where I come from, or the fact that I don't believe in God, or the fact that I spent time in Texas.
Yeah.
I don't think that comes as a shock to anybody. So, and there's a lot more comfort that comes from that, from just kind of admitting to myself that that is true.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't make me worse. Like if I just accept where I am and what I have, then I can more quickly get to where I want to go. But if I'm just going to do this little dance with myself where I'm like, no, I really am a Welsh writer. I really am from the woods. Then we're just going to waste time and I'm going to be performing for my whole life. And it's so exhausting performing all the time.
It is.
For every person in your life.
I think that's a really universal experience for a lot of artists. Is that feeling of like, I wish I was that. I want to be that. I'm going to try and be that. Why doesn't this sound right? Why doesn't this feel right? Because I'm not being honest with myself, right? There's I forget who said it, but there's someone, I guess I'll quote them in the edit, is like, the hard part about being an artist is that our sense of taste outpaces our skill, our level of skill.
Yes. God, is that true?
You know, and that's something that every artist has to learn. It's like, you get frustrated. If you're a filmmaker, you get frustrated because not everything that you make, nothing that you make looks like Paul Thomas Anderson or Quentin Tarantino or whoever.
And it won't.
And it never will. And that's the thing. It's like, why doesn't my work look like this? It doesn't look like Paul Thomas Anderson. It's like, well, because you're not Paul Thomas Anderson.
It's not supposed to look like that.
Make it look like you.
Yeah.
That's the best way forward as an artist is make it look like you.
Yeah.
Make it sound like you, because that's the only thing.
And your influences will come through.
They will.
You watch PTA and Denis Villeneuve, and like if you've seen enough movies, you can point out like, oh, that's John Ford. That feels you've seen every John Ford movie. They're not stealing, but it's just like there's inspiration there. But there's so much more Denis Villeneuve in his movies than John Ford or everybody else.
Correct.
And this is like my big problem with bands. Like, I'm sorry, everybody, if you're a big fan, Greta Van Fleet. My big issue with Greta Van Fleet. The music is great. That lead vocalist is insane.
Oh, the pipes on that guy.
What the hell is going on? I don't know how they ever tour. I'd give one show a year and be like, then I need to go back in for surgery. I don't know how he sings the way he does. But they are directly ripping off Led Zeppelin. Yeah. And it's not like they shy away from that. It's like the album art, the style of music, the lyrics, it's all Led Zeppelin, up, down, left, right, center, diagonally. That feels like a very early decision that you make as an artist, where you do what I did, which is find Ernest Hemingway, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to write exactly like this.
Yeah.
But because I'm not a veteran of the First World War and I'm not a bullfighter, my writing sounded a little bit differently.
Yeah. No, that's
and
right.
that's what you do. You start off mimicking and then you get more. And then you're like, oh, okay, you know what? I might mix Ernest Hemingway with like Wes Anderson. We'll just see what that goes because I like that. And then, you know what? I'm going to mix this with that story that my mom told me that one time. And then I'm going to mix it with my experience living in New York. And then, you know what? I really do like Denis Villeneuve. Maybe I'll work his influence in there. And by the time you actually get to your book or your script that you're working on, it is a wholly new amalgamation of everything that's ever inspired you in your life, like both personal and like other artists' work.
Right. And that's kind of like, that's the being purposeful as an artist.
Yes.
It's really important to be you and I talk about this a lot when we walk out of a movie. You can feel it when you read a book, when you watch a movie or a show, when you look at a painting. It's like purposeful art tends to be more impactful in terms of, because if you're not being purposeful, things can happen that you don't mean, that can be misconstrued, or that can muddy up the messaging or the theming or the overall piece as a whole. And I think learning how to be purposeful as an artist is exactly that. It's learning where your voice is.
Yeah.
Right. And learning how to both listen and express your own voice.
And to develop your voice.
And to develop it through the influences that you have. Because I think influence is something that we'll never be divorced from.
Absolutely not.
That's impossible.
Yeah.
You know, and I think developing a voice first starts with, it's funny, I think there's a flow chart. I think jealousy or envy turns into admiration and mimicry, turns into copying and inspiration, turns into homage and direct lines of comparison, right?
I think Alfred Hitchcock said there's nothing more disgusting to me than the art of the homage.
The art of the homage, yeah.
He hated it. It might have been Orson Welles was one of them. But they were like, God, there's nothing worse than the homage. Don't give me an homage of anything.
No.
And they're onto something with that.
They are, yeah.
There's a reason that I don't, and I'm sorry for this too. God, I'm hitting on everybody's favorites, but Quentin Tarantino is not my favorite. Listen, I love Inglourious Basterds.
Absolutely.
I do love that movie. Whoa, did he knock it out of the park. Pulp Fiction's fantastic. He's wonderful. That man is nowhere to be found in his movies.
Yeah.
Those movies are homages to other movies that Quentin Tarantino loves. That's how they feel to me. They feel very much like he went through and he was like, oh, I love this scene from 8.5. So I'm going to steal that kind of setup. And then I love this other scene from Seventh Seal. So then I'm going to steal that. And then by the time the storyboard is built, it's just all different movies.
Yeah.
I can't point to the Quentin of a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Exactly. And I think that's something that's really fascinating about Tarantino, is that to the general public, it's very Quentin Tarantino. It's very impressive.
Yes.
And it's because he's taking inspiration and kind of redoing them in kind of a similar style of the best, of the greats that inspired him.
Yeah.
And when you take the best and you put it all into a movie, of course people like it. Because I think people who aren't in the film industry, who don't watch a lot of movies, they don't know who John Ford is. Right?
Kurosawa.
They don't know who Fellini is.
No.
And when they're some of the most incredible filmmakers of all time. So yes, when you take from that as inspiration and you put that directly into your film, people are going to love it.
Yeah.
Those are the best people who have existed in the format.
Yeah. You may as well cut the best scenes out of their best movies and just cut them together and paste that edit. And
I think it's pretty common for film school students to study Tarantino and be blown away by him in their first year. And then as they reach their senior year, they go, well, Tarantino's not as impressive anymore because I watched Kurosawa, I watched all of, Uzo, and I watched all of Fellini and all of the French New Wave, like all the old spaghetti westerns. And you see it for what it is.
You see Quentin Tarantino for like how referential he is.
Yes.
Which art is entirely referential. Nothing is entirely new. Like even art that feels completely new, it's just they're pulling from the same inspirations, just doing it in a different way.
Yeah.
We're all just kind of recycling the same thing. But like this whole thing is story structure. Story structure exists because no matter where we are in the world or what language we're speaking, there is a structure to the stories that we tell.
Always.
There is a beginning and a middle and an end. And everybody struggles with the ending.
It does.
Isn't that funny?
I know.
Most stories just end.
Most stories do just end. I know. And I think that's the thing about things like storytelling is that once you see the inspiration, once you start paying attention to all the references, then you start to notice kind of a meta thing where you see artists in conversation through art, right? Which I think is a lot more common in writing than it has been in film. I think film is tough because film is hard to make. So you don't want to waste your one shot at making a movie at like adding to the conversation, right?
Not really.
No.
Personally.
No, but you see it across mediums, right? And formats. But that's the thing where it's so easy to compare yourself to the best in the world, the best. And because when you enter a form like acting, I think, you know what is a good movie that captures this is Whiplash, where he wants to be the best drummer in the world. And so he's looking at all the greats of before. And that's referenced time and time again within the movie is Buddy Rich, the Bird, all these people. And he works because he wants to be the best in the world. And we don't understand the lengths that people are willing to go to for those kinds of things, you know, because you won't get there just by doing things. You'll get there by practicing, by being vigilant, by being purposeful with what you're doing. Someone left a comment on our Age of Scorpius video because the thing that was said in that by that author was, I have my 10,000 hours. I've done this so much. I've rewritten this book 10 times. And it's like, it's not just about 10,000 hours. It's about 10,000 purposeful hours. Redoing the same thing over and over again just means you're locking in your bad habits. You don't want to lock in your bad habits. You want to get rid of the bad habits and keep the good stuff.
Yeah, that was a really good, insightful comment.
Yeah.
And I think actually weirdly makes a good argument for film school, which was another thing that we talked about recently. Because I think it's difficult to know when you're doing something incorrectly unless you have somebody around who can point to it and be like, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
You don't need to waste your energy on that.
Yeah.
You should focus on this other thing instead. Just like gentle redirection. That was like the most useful thing when I was in college getting into playwriting was just having somebody there be like, you're going on a good direction here. Focus on that. You don't need all these other like bells and whistles. Just this thing. Chase that to the end. That feels like the vehicle.
Yeah. Well, and you and I talk about this because we've been to different screenings, test screenings, friends screenings, premieres, film festivals, all that stuff. When you walk out of a film festival screening, you can feel movies or films or short films that are different. And I think it's a lot easier to diagnose a problem than it is to come up with like a solution or to pin why something is working so well. That takes a lot of skill. I think that's why good professors in art schools are invaluable, is because they're really honed in on being able to pick up not just what you're doing wrong. I think it's typically pretty easy to tell what you're doing wrong, but what are you doing right? Where is the correct path for you based on what you're giving me, right? Kind of what you're saying. But when we walk out of certain screenings, we talk about right away. It's like, what's not working there? Why is that not working? You know, I wish they would have gone in this direction instead, right? Points of comparison, that's all it is. I think ultimately, I carry around a notebook in my pocket, typically just for jotting stuff down. And the thing I have written on the front of my notebook is comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that is true. I think to compare yourself to others who are either in your field across from you or in your field above you removes the joy of doing the thing. Because you're constantly in a loop of, well, my thing that I'm making is not as good as the person over there. How do I get to be that?
And I don't think it's just about comparing yourself to people who are doing better than you, but maybe also comparing yourself to people who are in a worse position than you. I remember a couple of years ago, I read this story in the LA Times that blew me right into the grave. I was like, cover me in dirt. I want to be done.
Yeah.
But it was this cinematographer who had worked and lived in LA for 30 years, worked on some of the biggest movies, had a wife, 3 kids, one of which had severe developmental and physical disabilities, so required a lot of at-home care, like hospital bed in the living room kind of thing, very expensive, very hard. And they had been looking for a reason to leave Los Angeles for several years because of the cost of living.
Yeah.
And an opportunity came, and it was looking for a while like Albuquerque in New Mexico was going to be the new hub of Hollywood.
Yes.
So they sold their house, packed up their whole family, pulled the kids out of school and moved to Albuquerque. And within a year, all that work dried up.
Yeah.
And they were like, now we're out in Albuquerque. We don't know anybody. We are not familiar with the school system and we're not super happy with it. Our daughter or son, they're struggling even more than they were before because they're away from all of the familiarity. And we're not even saving as much money as we thought we would be because we're not working. So what a nightmare. And I just I remember reading this story and just being like, what? Like when entering this whirlpool of like, what is this industry and what does it mean? And if this guy can't do it, then I don't know if I can do it. And just being haunted by that. And it paralyzes you, being like, look at all the horrible things that can happen in the world. I don't want to work on my screenplay. What matters? I mean, and then suddenly I'm not writing. So either way, the result is the same. It's like if some Nepo baby gets hired and I don't, I'm pissed off.
Yeah.
And if some cinematographer moves to Albuquerque and just gets the worst hand of all time, I'm pissed off and terrified.
Yeah.
So either way, I'm scared.
I know. I think that's a good way to put it, though, is like the amount of Reddit threads I've seen on writing, self-published, screenwriters, that kind of thing, trying to say, let's use publishing as the example. It's like, well, when it comes to publishing, getting traditionally published, should I be worried about the X, Y, and Z in my draft? And the typical top comment is like, are you done with your first draft? No. Worry about getting the first draft done and then start asking these questions, because what's going to happen is you're going to paralyze yourself worrying about how you're going to get this thing published, and you only have 10,000 words written down.
I have found that starting with a simple goal is it.
Yeah.
I want to submit for this contest. That's it. I will not let it get bigger than that.
Yes.
Otherwise, I will never finish it. There are scripts that I have been writing and rewriting since 2019.
Yeah.
And I am so sick of doing that. I'm like, I want to spend less than a year working on this screenplay. So I'm going to write per this contest's guidelines, and that's it. I'm not expanding it past that. And anything that comes out of, like anything else, any other tangent or fun thing that comes on top, that's salsa on top of my bowl.
Yes.
I don't need it.
I think that's a really good argument for things like contests, or like NaNoWriMo, right?
Yeah.
Putting barriers up,
creative people need structure
or limitations.
Yeah. And I don't think comparison should be the bumper with which your bowling ball bounces against.
No.
You know, I know it's there and I think it's perfectly natural. I don't think it's poisonous by any means. I think it's helpful to notice when you're doing it and why, and to try to let it pass like a cloud.
Yeah, well,
it's possible.
It's like all things. It's, if done in excess, it can be bad for you.
Yeah.
Right?
But if you're like me and you can't let it go because you're bitter and stubborn, then turning it into like good fuel to do something is like, I think, the next best thing that you can do.
Yeah.
Because I've tried being the kind of person who can just let things go. Connor is that kind of person. Something awful happens to Connor. One time he got hit by a car and he was like, well, I guess things just happen. I mean, literally, you just can't shake the man. It doesn't matter. We could have a 9.9 earthquake before. That's never happened before in the history of the earth. And I think Connor would not even get up from his chair. Very seriously. I'm not like that.
No.
Some things stick with me and I can't let it go. And I get caught on that carousel of just fury and terror. And if I don't do something with it, I will just pace the living room and sweat forever.
Yeah.
So I want to share something with you.
Okay, please.
I read a Substack article that made a lot of really interesting points. I'll link it down below if anybody else is interested. It's written by Ayana Stood, or Ayanda Stood. Soul Salon is the name of the newsletter.
Soul Salon, okay.
And she talked about comparison a little bit. This is an older post of hers, but she posits that comparison is less a choice and more a consequence of culture. If you exist in a culture based in inequality and hyper-individualism, feeling comparative and competitive is a natural response, which I think is a very good point.
It is a good point.
We do live in the United States. Again, I can't speak for the rest of the world. I don't know how everybody else is doing out there, but I know in the United States, we live in a hyper-individualistic society.
We do.
So if you see another person who's winning, it's like, well, they don't deserve to win. I deserve to win.
Right.
And you start running. And the whole economy and political system is based on you doing that in perpetuity. Or
not even they're winning, I deserve to win. That's one mode of it. There's another mode, which is like scarcity. There's like a scarcity mindset.
Yes.
It's like they're winning, so that means I'm falling behind. They just won an award. What am I doing? Right?
They got one of the 5 jobs that are available right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's something that happens in art and in the world generally, you know, because the world is a scarce place, unfortunately. There are only so many jobs that can go around, especially when it comes to art. But I think about something that my wonderful friend and mentor, Emily Newman, has told me a couple times, because kind of like you, when I first moved out here, I was trying to be a screenwriter and director, and I was applying every year to Sundance for their writing labs, their directing labs, and for their Ignite program, which for those of you who are under the age of 25, Sundance Ignite is a program that allows filmmakers under the age of 25 to submit in kind of a special contest for up and coming new budding talent. And I submitted to that every single year for about 3 years. And I was working with Newman at the time when I was submitting for 1 year. And I'd worked really hard on this film, and I knew it wasn't very good. And she told me, when I told her I was submitting, she said, don't get too attached to it, to the idea of like getting through the Sundance Labs, because they're great. They're amazing. She's worked for the Sundance Labs before as an assistant director, which I didn't even know you could do. She's like, I think Sundance is an amazing program. I think the artists who go through there are incredible, and they get wonderful opportunities that would be career changing. Absolutely. They are not the only avenue for success. And I think she could tell that I was putting a lot of stock into hoping that I got into this. Because it's kind of like therapy a little bit, where when you have a breakthrough in therapy, I think some people, if they have a breakthrough in therapy, they go, well, that's going to fix all my problems. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a panacea.
Yes.
Right. And a panacea can turn into a poison very quickly, where I thought if I just get into Sundance, then my career's good. I'll be able to kind of coast through that, and all the opportunities will open up. And she told me, don't look at other people's quick success and assume that you are undeserving because your success is not happening as quickly. Mm-hmm. Because success, especially in the film industry, is kind of like a lightning strike, where it can happen very quickly to people. It's not usually overnight, but just because somebody else is having lightning success, it doesn't mean that the thing you're doing is wrong or worse quality, or that you are undeserving of that.
And it actually doesn't even mean that they're taking away what could have or should have been yours.
Exactly.
It's like that was never yours to begin with.
Right.
Then.
Right.
The scarcity mindset is manufactured. And I think it's very understandable why artists can really get stuck there, to be like, well, they got that one residency that was available to us, or like they got this one spot in this 5-person program that I could have had. But it's totally manufactured and phony and fake. It's just like with Sundance, you can apply next year.
Yeah.
You can apply to other residencies, or you could go back to school, or you could just keep working on the thing that you're making. You could self-finance it.
Yeah.
You could get a different job. And then because of that job and the financial security you get through that, you can open up your own nonprofit. Like, your path is going to be what it is. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's any, it's not worth your energy to kind of bite after what doesn't belong to you.
I totally agree. And I think it kind of goes in line with what we were talking about earlier, where artists kind of have a responsibility to their own art to learn how to tell the truth within themselves. I think also people deserve, I think you should seek learning how to live the honesty of your own life. Don't live like somebody else. Don't chase after things that in your mind, because you always know what's a lie. In your heart, you always know what's a lie, what's not working, the relationship you should get out of, the friendship you should end, the thing you shouldn't be doing, but you do anyway, right? Because it's the right thing or the correct thing or whatever.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit in our film school episode, but my approach to networking, I think, has hindered me, but also like ultimately helped me a lot. Mm-hmm. I think it has hindered me because there have been plenty of parties and opportunities that I've been a part of where people are like, "Oh, that's XYZ guy from XYZ cool guy production company, and he's looking for a script that's kind of like something you wrote. You should go over there and flirt with him and try to get that thing made." And there was part of me that was like, that's probably a smart thing to do. Mm-hmm. I probably should just take my jacket off and pull my top down and go over there and be like, "I have a screenplay, Mr. President."
Put on the Texas accent again.
Yeah, I'm back to rodeo days. But the larger part of me was just like, I don't think that's for me. Yeah, that doesn't feel, it's not in line with me. I'm like, my writing is too American for this. it's too plains.
No, but that's a really good point. Like, my parents are not artists. My dad was a hockey player and a lawyer and a real estate developer.
I don't know, I've had your dad's barbecue ribs. I think he might be an artist.
He is an artist with the smoker.
God, a smoked rib. There's nothing better.
And my mom was a CPA and a financial investigator and a county manager. Like no art involved in what they're doing.
You're a work of art, baby.
Well, thank you.
She made you.
Thank you, darling.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of trouble understanding what I was doing and what I was going through at the start of my career.
Yes.
I think they understand it now just because there's been so many years of me kind of explaining it and me turning down their ideas. But I think as a parent, it's a natural thing to want to give your kids a point of like, well, why don't you try this? You know?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And my mom, God bless her, has told you, well, why don't you learn how to use these AI tools? Because it seems like there's a lot of money that could be made and you could make your money doing that first, like making AI things and then use that to make real films that you want to make, right? It's a similar mindset to that she had before, which is like, well, you want to go to film school, but like, why not get a degree in accounting first? And then you can go make films anyway, right? But you always have a degree in accounting. It's a similar like fallback plan. And it's like they don't understand that and I've told my mom this openly. It's like, that's not in line with me. I have a problem with doing that because that's not who I am.
That's not for me.
That's not for me.
There are a lot of things that feel that way. And maybe it sounds a little pretentious to say that because there's part of me that's like, just take advantage of every opportunity you have.
Sure.
Just grind, just work, just take what's yours, like elbows out. But I really, if it doesn't feel like it belongs to me, I don't want it.
No.
It almost like taints the rest of what I have.
Exactly. I think, and I think also that the way you make your living has an effect on you.
How could it not?
I think the way you make your living and the way you live within the world has an effect on you and your soul and the way that you kind of walk through the world, I don't even mean soul in like a religious sense, but like just the way that you have to live every day, the person that you have to fall asleep as, it has to have an effect on you. And so the best way you can walk through the world is the way in which you feel the most at ease at the end of the day, right? And that goes back to comparison where it's like you can't be somebody else. You just have to be you. You have to live as honestly with yourself as you can, right? And I never got into Sundance, but that's okay because it wasn't going to be the program for me. Mm-hmm. And I was never going to be the artist, kind of like you when you talk about residencies where it's like, or your time in New York. They post all the films that get into Sundance Ignite. I wasn't making those films.
No. No, and I read these books that are made by these people who go to residency, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not writing this kind of stuff.
Right.
If this is what people are looking at right now, then there's a reason I didn't get into that residency. Exactly. It's like, that wasn't a good fit. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I would have done.
Right.
And
it's not worth it to me as an artist to start being dishonest for the sake of reaching that goal.
I'm terrible at being dishonest.
Yes.
I really am.
Yes, you are.
I'm terrible. You can tell. We were at a party recently. There was somebody there. I wasn't happy to see them.
Nope. No, you were not.
And I thought my face looked like this.
Yeah. And I told her in the car that her face looked like this. Unblinking. You have a tough time hiding when things don't feel good to you.
I can't.
You can't do it.
I can't do it. Dishonesty actually makes me physically uncomfortable.
Right. Performance.
Anytime somebody's performing at me, or if I'm starting to perform myself, I'm just like, I can't do it. I think I may have told the story on the podcast before. I'm not entirely sure. I did go to residency this year.
You did? Yes.
I went to a residency in Vermont and it was fabulous. There was a wonderful group of writers there who were a much better fit. I met them and I was like, okay, I'm seeing why I got into this one and not the other ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, this is a better fit.
And you talked about that the whole time of like, I really feel like I belong out here.
Yeah. No, I didn't feel that way. I wasn't that.
Really? You don't think?
No.
I remember you talking about like, I love it here. I think this is wonderful.
Oh, just for me. Yeah. I was like, I like Vermont. I like the wide open wilderness.
Yeah.
Like, I like seeing the sky that's not polluted by light. That's fabulous. But as far as like the group, like I liked the group, but I did still kind of feel like an outsider in a certain sense. I think I'm just always going to feel that way a little bit. I don't know. But the group that was there is still very artistic and very sensitive. And there was one time I was walking into the inn to get food. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
I told you about it as soon as it happened. But I was walking into the inn to get some food and there was the group of writers outside and I was like, oh, are we all smoking? Anybody have a cigarette? And they all turned and looked at me with this very serious look on their face. And one of them was crying. And I was like, oh, we're not smoking? Somebody here allergic to smoke? And they were like, no, it's a gratitude circle. I was like, that is so awesome.
Yeah.
I have to go inside right now.
Right. We're going around in a circle and talking about what we're grateful in our lives for.
Yeah. What are you grateful for? We'd love to hear it. And I'm just like, I can't meet you where you're at.
I'm grateful the buffet is still open and I'm getting seconds right now.
Yeah. I think I made a joke and just went inside. I was like, ooh, sure am glad my foot didn't fly off during that accident. Like, I don't know what I said. I just whoops-de-doo-doo. Happy to have all 10 toes.
Right.
Like,
I know. And that was an interesting thing, is that you simultaneously felt like, wow, this is a place that feels so in tune with me and like me as a person, Vermont, and the studio center generally. But at the same time, feeling a little bit at a distance with the rest of some of the artists.
Yeah, I'm such a hokey dork. Like I was up all night and I would go for a walk and I would like see my breath and look at the river and be like, I am one with the trees. Like I get real. I'm not a spiritual or religious person, but when I'm alone in nature, that's as hokey pokey, artsy fartsy as I get.
Yeah.
Like I start petting trees. I name them. I bond with all the ducks. I've made friends with the ducks. So here they are. This one over here is Sasha. I really care if I show up the next day and like a bush is a little bit more dead than it was the day before. I get very emotional and very connected to all of that. The people.
Which is very funny for you to say that out loud, because there's a concept in our relationship that Lindsay has dubbed yellow rosebush.
Oh.
Lindsay, do you want to describe what a yellow rosebush is for the audience at home?
Connor loves talking about goddamn nothing, and I can't stand it.
That's one way to phrase it. That's one way to frame
We'll be
what I'm
driving
saying.
down the highway, and this is what he's talking about. Oh, yeah, that cloud looks kind of like a... Oh, no, I guess it doesn't. Look, I was going to say it kind of looks like a plate. Doesn't it kind of look like your mother's plate? You know, the one she's always eating toast on? Yeah. I feel like the sky's a little bit more blue today.
Yeah.
And I want to slap him across the head.
We'll drive past the pier. Because I'm very unfiltered with you. I tend to be pretty unfiltered with you.
And that's your unfiltered. Once again, unflappable Connor. Just like, wow, pear tart sounds like, pretty good right now. That's him unfiltered.
We'll be driving, there's like a pier on the ocean. Like, gosh, isn't that amazing? They just decided we're going to put up a bunch of boards and we're going to make a thing out there so we can fish. Isn't that just incredible?
My unfiltered thoughts are we need to bring back public execution.
Yeah.
That's my unfiltered thought. And you meet me with yellow rose bush.
Right.
Oh, look at these beautiful yellow roses. Oh, the bush isn't there anymore. I wonder what they did with that bush.
And I found out the reason it's called yellow rose bush is because I found out from your family. This is at a familial gathering of your family specifically.
Yes.
The matriarch and patriarch of your family.
Yes. Two of my favorite people in the world.
And they're so excellent. And I'm now realizing mirror us almost one-to-one.
Yeah, my aunt and uncle. Yeah. It's pretty great.
And your aunt at one point said, and I'm getting nervous in the car. And he's going on about some bullshit yellow rose bush trying to make me feel better. And I don't give a shit about the roses.
She's like, what kind of conversation is that? I mean, just if you have nothing to say nothing.
And I look at your uncle and we make eye contact and we're like, oh.
Yeah, was there deep understanding there?
Oh,
because my aunt and I did the same thing. We were like, yeah, these fools yipping and yapping about goddamn nothing.
We both looked at our counterpart and went, I see you. Yeah, I understand.
You're right.
Right.
Yes.
But
yeah, I don't like small talk. I love spending time with nature, but we don't have small talk. I don't have small talk with the bush.
I know.
We're not talking about how slightly different the weather is today.
Which is funny because in my mind, it's the same thing, just a different mode. You know, me noticing a cloud or looking at a duck crossing the street in a certain way makes me feel communed with the world around me. Because I feel it's that cloud thing. I feel like every problem in my life is just a cloud passing by that I can look at and go, there it goes. That's it.
I can't stand you.
And you don't do that
I
typically.
Can't stand you. The peace you have in your heart. I could just rip you apart. Are you out of your mind?
You could use your lack of peace against me.
Oh
yes.
Man, you spend one night in the war-torn country of my heart. See how long you last.
I think the way I view the world a little bit is because you've talked about your thing with diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier in this episode, you talked about how sometimes you feel like you're wasting your second life.
I do.
Or you feel disappointed with your second life.
Yeah.
And I think the experiences that we have shape the way that we look at and walk through the world. And likewise, I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast. I had a pretty severe, almost fatal hit and run car accident where a drunk driver hit me. And I walked away without a scratch on me, but I should have definitely perished.
Miraculous.
Yeah.
Miraculous.
I'll post a picture of the car that I was in, but that accident had a similar effect on me as diabetes did you, but in a different way where I went, wow, it can all just end like in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, because the way it happened was I was driving home and I was pulling up to a stoplight, and the stoplight had, as I was pulling up to it, had turned from green to red. And because of that, I was sitting there waiting for the light to turn. And because I was sitting there waiting, the car hit me. And in my mind, it's like, what if I had made the green light instead of, had it got stuck by what if I had left the bar 5 minutes earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's kind of in the back of my head at all times. It's like the things that we do all day shape us. Getting stuck at a red light for a little bit longer, having to pull something out of our hair for an extra 30 seconds, right? Taking the time to brush your teeth or make your bed. It changes and affects, it ripples throughout your entire day. And we have no idea how that's going to affect us in the long run, And that's kind of a point of comparison in my life that I use constantly is the way that my life is going is because of the decisions that I made earlier,
mm-hmm.
right? And I think the same is true for careers, where it's like the decisions you make in your career have rippling effects in your career later on as well. And only you can make those decisions. Nobody else can make them for you, right? And I think comparison is ultimately can become a tool. But if you're not paying attention, it can kind of become a shackle. And it's much better to turn something into a tool of positivity than a shackle that holds you back and keeps you from progressing. That's my thought.
I think you should get angry and finish your screenplay.
I agree with that too.
Thank you.
I think this has been a great conversation, Lindsay. I've had a really good time talking about this.
I'm glad you got to talk about your yellow rose bush.
Thank you for listening.
I hope that fulfilled you.
Thank you for listening so patiently. I think we've covered a lot of good ground on comparison. I don't know. Is there anything else that you want to say about it?
Nothing that's burning. I'm actually not that angry about comparison today. So you caught me on a good day.
Good. Yeah.
I'm not so like, Recently a friend told me that he was having some really exciting meetings and he was like maybe getting some famous people attached to a project and blah, blah, blah. And I was 99.9% thrilled for him because this is one of my favorite people in the world. I would give him both of my kidneys if he asked. But there was that 0.1% that was like, damn it. Mm-hmm. God damn you.
It's so natural too.
And I felt so guilty as soon as the thought entered my head. I was like, can you just be happy for this other person that you love? But of course, there was a moment where I was like, kind of hurts. It kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. And he said something great during that conversation where, because I told him, I was like, the minute I met him, I knew he was going to be successful and that things were going to happen. He was going to have movies made and that everything was going to be beautiful, lovely, Maybelline cover girl. And he was like, everything's just happening in its own time. Yeah. And I think that's a very simple but very true thing. Everything's happening in its own time.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about this before, but there's an idea between of like being focused on the target versus being focused on the execution. And I think as an artist, being too focused on the target or the result of the fame or the success or the prestige that comes with being a successful artist is a different way to walk through the world than being focused on making the best art possible that you can make right now.
Carl Jung had a great quote on this, actually. I want to find it because it was great. Okay, yes, he said, don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it your target, the more you are going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue, and it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. Happiness must happen, and the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it. I want you to listen to what your conscience commands you to do and go on to carry it out to the best of your knowledge. Then you will live to see that in the long run, I say, success will follow you precisely because you had forgotten to think about it. And this was an idea that I had a few professors in college talk about too, where they were like, my professor used the example of a lollipop. She was like, if you just keep thinking like, oh God, I really want a lollipop right now. I haven't thought about a lollipop in years. I really want it. All you're focusing on now is how much you want it.
Yeah.
All you're focused on is like, God, I want to taste that blue raspberry nothingness. Like I just want it. And if you just start passively caring about it, you're more likely to actually find the opportunity to get it.
Yeah.
Just let it sit in the back of your head. Not to tie this all back to insomnia and sleeping, but your brain is pretty good at figuring out problems when you're not focused on it.
Absolutely.
You know, if something matters enough to you, your brain will cook on it. Just let it cook.
Well, and the thing that he's saying there, it's funny. I don't know if you know this about me. I think I've mentioned it before. I read the Tao pretty regularly. I don't like pretend to be a practicing Taoist or anything, but I think the Tao is like a really interesting philosophical book to read through. And one of the verses is, if I can remember it, I'm going to butcher it, but it's like, when the work is done, it is forgotten. That is why it lasts forever.
Yes. Yes.
And I think the more I think about that over the years, the more I understand what it means. And I think Carl Jung captured it perfectly, which is when you try to grip so tight, it won't become the thing. It can't become the thing. You have to let it go and let it do the thing that it's going to. And if you focus on just being and doing the best that you can, then the result that you want will come by virtue of the fact that you're doing a thing that's in line with who you are, right?
I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Connor.
And this has been a Hidden Rabbits Fireside Chat.
Yeah. I know we'll figure out a way to get better at ending these episodes, but I think this has been a really good chat, Lindsay. I've really enjoyed talking with you for an hour and change. I guess some housekeeping stuff. If you like this, subscribe, comment. We like to hear, we read through all of your comments. We don't always respond because it tends to be a lot, but we love reading comments about what you're doing right now, what you like working on, things that...
What's on your mind?
What's on your mind? Engaging in the conversation. We have such a wonderful, we were talking about this before the podcast. We've somehow managed to cultivate a really wonderful audience who is so engaged and loves talking to us, and it's very conversational.
We have the best people over here. I don't know how we got so lucky, but we got really lucky with the people that found us.
Yeah.
But speaking of, we really want to thank our coffee members who, because of their support, were able to make this show. We were able to get new mic stands. We're able to invest in better equipment. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. If you're interested in our coffee page, you can buy us a coffee, or you can become a member and you get mini episodes and some fun behind the scenes stuff.
Yes, we've started posting mini episodes that are between 5 to 10 minutes long on our coffee page for our executive members. I don't know what they're called.
I named them all after bunnies.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. The Flemish Giant, I think, is the one.
Yeah.
But in case you just want a little bit extra of us and you want to support the show and what we do, that's the best way to do it. Other than that, we want to do more topical conversations like this. We have a topic suggestion box in the description. So if you have a topic that you think could be interesting that we could talk about for an hour, drop it in that topic suggestion box. We would love to read it and to see what you're interested in. Other than that, I think that covers everything. She's Lindsay, I'm Connor, and we'll see you next week.
I'll see you in 2 seconds.